Welcome everybody. We're so happy to have you here. Welcome to Third Actors and folks new to Third Act. We are going to spend a special hour together. We're grateful that you found some time to be with us. My name is Anna. I am going to share some housekeeping details and walk you through what's going to happen today, and I'm pretty excited to be here with y'all and with our amazing program. So, this is a Zoom webinar. You are welcome to use closed captioning. It is available on this call. The chat is disabled on this call because we have a large number of people, but the Q&A is open and you are welcome to ask questions. We invite you to ask questions about solar or Bill's new book or Sunday. It's not the place for every single question, but we welcome your questions there, and there will be a time when we'll be able to address some of them. Um, Third Act, if you are new to Third Act, is a fairly young organization that works with those of us in our third act, folks over 60, though everyone is welcome. We don't check ID. And we are excited to highlight this new book of Bill McKibben's today. We're going to hear about the book. We're going to hear about Sunday, which is an exciting day of action coming up in September. And we're going to hear Bill in conversation with our greatest essayist, Rebecca Solnit. This is Bill's 21st book, and it is something that, for me, I feel we just heard the Beach Boys singing The Warmth of the Sun, and at Third Act we believe in the power of music very strongly. I feel the warmth of the sun when I have read parts of this book and heard about the focus of this book, because when things feel dark, I want to look for the helpers and I want to turn towards the light. And I believe that that's what we're doing at Third Act, and that's what Bill's doing in this book. And I'm happy that we can surround ourselves with people who believe that there's a better world and are actively building one. And Bill McKibben and Rebecca Solnit are those people, and Third Actors are those people, and you joining us today are those people. So you're very welcome here, and we'll hear more details about how to get involved with Sunday and with Third Act at the end of this call. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Bill McKibben, and it's an honor to be here with the virtual launch of your brand new book, Here Comes the Sun.
Anna, thank you so much, as always, friend. What a pleasure to be with you, and what a pleasure to get to show everybody the brand new Third Act Sunday t-shirts, which are now available, and stylish people everywhere rocking them. Um, I'm going to pick up where Anna left off. It's a terrible and dark period right now on our planet, where the effects of climate change are kicking in disastrous ways. Thoughts today with hundreds, maybe thousands of people drowned in the latest round of flooding in Pakistan. And where, of course, our own country is in a period of extraordinary darkness, which at Third Act we're working hard all the time to try and stand up to. We were very moved and pleased last week when the president's um, oleaginous sidekick, Stephen Miller, complained that things were going great as they militarized the nation's capital, except for all those elderly hippies out there protesting. That made all of us very happy, um, and determined to continue. Um, in those dark times, one has to figure out ways to keep going and keep going strongly. I've had a good day because it's been extremely beautiful in the mountains of the east today, crisp and cool and clear, more than a hint of fall in the air. Uh, and because I got to go hang out with my dear friend Bernie Sanders for a while up in Burlington because we were doing some taping for the Sunday movie that'll be out in a week or 10 days. And since he's been the champion of solar for all, especially for low-income communities across America, it was really fun to get to be up there with him and Jane and get a tour of their solar panels, which have been up for almost a decade. For me, this period of darkness is very strange in a sense because this book and my work this year is largely about the one big good thing that's happening on planet Earth. A thing so big and so good that I hope it will help not only take blunt the climate crisis, but also do something important about the crisis in inequality and democracy that's haunting us now. That's a tall order, but this is a incredible, incredible moment that I get to chronicle. I'll tell you just a little bit about the kind of backstory of the book. I wasn't actually really planning to write it, but I was having trouble getting people excited about this Sunday thing. Not at third act, everyone there has always been excited, but in the broader community. So we didn't know if we could pull it off. And I thought to myself, well, I do have another way of getting things across, outside organizing. I am a writer after all, so I should write a book. Um, I was originally going to be writing it this year, this summer, but uh, as it became clear to me just how incredibly fast this solar resurgence surge was happening around the world, I figured out that a year from now would be behind the curve. I'm enough of a reporter that I like to be out in front. And so I wrote like a demon. I was researching last year and I really started setting pen to paper on about New Year's Eve, the day of 1st of January this year, and was more or less done the body of the book by the end of January, which is what one has to be to get a book published this time of year. As it was, my publisher, W. Norton, was working very, very fast, something they're able to do because they're the only worker-owned big publisher in the country. Um, but and then I was able to keep revising right up through June or so, so I'm able to stay on top of the news. But I was really pleased when there was an excerpt of this book in the New Yorker earlier this summer, that the main reaction people had, besides all the flattering words about the writing, the main reaction people had, even from people who'd been very immersed in this work, was, I had no idea. I had no idea how fast this was happening because it is happening with incredible speed. Just to give you the barest of numbers, May is the last month we have really good data for. In May, the Chinese were putting up 3 gigawatts of solar power a day. A gigawatt is the rough equivalent of a big coal-fired power plant. So they were building the solar equivalent of a big coal-fired power plant every 8 hours. Chinese carbon emissions are down now in 2025. They've finally begun to decline, even as the economy continues to grow and even as their per capita carbon emissions remain way below what ours are. Back here in the States, California was the kind of mm, poster child here for progress. It's not that it's done everything right. And indeed, in the last couple of years, Governor Newsom's taken some steps backward around rooftop solar. But there was enough momentum that California really passed some kind of tipping point sometime in the last 14 months or so. Now, almost every day, California produces more than 100% of the electricity it's using from renewable sources for long stretches of the day, which means that at night, when the sun goes down, the world's fourth largest economy, is being powered primarily by batteries on the grid that have been soaking up excess sunshine all afternoon, batteries that did not exist even 3 years ago. Um, California has now fallen behind Texas as the place that's installing this stuff faster than any other on the planet, and or in any other in the country. Um, so it's a reminder that the limits here are not necessarily imposed by ideology. Texas is the headquarters of the hydrocarbon industry, and big oil tried to slow down the transition there this winter in their legislative session. Uh, but people from around Texas showed up to say, don't do this. Our community depends on solar power to pay the school taxes. The wind farm in town is what's keeping the old folks' home open, on and on and on. And the legislature backed away. Our Congress didn't back away, of course. And President Trump and his administration have been doing everything they can to slow down this transition. Some of it just absurd and brutal. On Friday, the administration announced that they were putting a stop work order on a wind farm off the coast of Rhode Island that was 90% completed on national security grounds, whatever that means. Um, this is obviously the folly of enormous proportion, and it's obviously directly related to the huge amounts of campaign contributions that flowed in after candidate Trump told oil executives that for $1 billion they could have anything they wanted. Um, but I don't think that it will slow down the worldwide progress of this technology. If anything, I think it will speed it up. We've been trying to sell people liquefied natural gas from the United States to run their electric systems, but I think it's pretty clear that most countries would prefer now not to be tied to a nation as fickle and erratic as ours for their supply of energy. Indeed, last week, Indonesia, the fourth largest country in the world, announced that they were pursuing 100 gigawatts of solar power over the next 5 years. A truly astonishing build out in that nation that will cover most of their rural power needs. Um, if we, the reason that this is happening is because with a combination of activism and engineering, activism creating demand and engineering meeting that demand, the price of solar power and wind power 4 or 5 years ago dropped below the price of coal and gas and oil. We live, as I've now said many times, on a planet where the cheapest way to make power is to point a sheet of glass at the sun. And those favorable economics mean that given enough time, we'll get where we need to go. 30 years from now, we'll run this planet on sun and wind because of its economics. Sadly, if it takes us anything like 30 years to get there, then the planet we run on sun and wind will be a broken planet because that's how fast climate change is progressing in real time, faster all the time. In fact, the coincidence of these two trends, the rapidly warming planet and the rapid acceleration of renewable energy, is almost like a kind of Hollywood film. June of 2023 was the month when temperatures really began to spike in this latest round of accelerated heating. That was the month when scientists said these are the hottest temperatures on this earth in 125,000 years. And every month since then has been the hottest, October, the second hottest, May, whatever. We're up still in that hugely elevated territory. June of 2023 was also the same month when humans, for the first time, were putting up a gigawatt of solar power every day. So our job is to figure out how to speed up even further this transformation. and especially to do it here in the United States, which put more carbon into the air than anyone else, and is the country most actively resisting this this change. And when I say the country most actively resisting, there was another big story today about Saudi Arabia's plans to provide all of its electricity from solar power within a few years and to provide a lot to other people as well. We are, for the moment, in the unique position of trying to kill off the most important energy in the world, energy source that was invented here, Bell Labs, 1954. If you're old enough, you helped fund that first solar cell by dropping dimes in payphones in your youth. Um, so that's why we're doing Sun Day. It's a way to do two things. One is to change as many local and state laws as possible, since we can't change them in Washington right now. And many of those are just ways to make it much, much simpler and easier for people to put solar on their roof or their apartment. And the second thing, the second reason we're doing this is really the reason I wrote this book, to try and take solar power and wind power out of the category where they've lived in our minds for many decades. And that's the category of alternative energy. That's what we've been calling it over and over and over again, but it isn't alternative energy anymore. It is the obvious, common sense, straightforward way to power this world. 90%, 95% of new generating capacity in the world last year, both in the world and in the US, came from sun and wind. This is the way that we must turn. And if we turn really fast, then we have a chance, as I said, to blunt the worst of climate change, not to stop global warming, it is too late for that, but to stop it short perhaps of where it cuts civilization off the knees, to shave off some tenths of a degree, and every tenth of a degree moves another 100 million of our brothers and sisters out of a comfortable climate zone and into a dangerous one. Um, but also, if we do this, also, and this was the thing that sort of became a revelation to me as I was writing the book, because I was fixated, of course, on climate and things as I started. But the more and more I thought about it, the more it became clear to me what a remarkable change in so many ways this will be. Um, one way that I started thinking about it was to ask myself the kind of thought experiment. What would the geopolitics of our planet have looked like over the last 70 years if oil was of trivial value? How many wars and coups and assassination plots and terrorist uprisings and things would have been avoided in a world that ran on sun and wind, which are available to everyone everywhere? And how much less concentrated political and economic power would we have in a world like that? Our rise towards the grotesque and cartoonish inequality of the moment begins more or less with John D. Rockefeller, who was the first to figure out that if he could control this magic source of energy, fossil fuel, then he would be a very powerful man indeed, and he so became. But there are many heirs to his title now. Our biggest oil and gas barons in this country over the last decades have been the Koch brothers, who control more refining and pipeline capacity than anyone else. And they've used their winnings to erode the pillars of our democracy and make them very easy for Donald Trump to kick over. In Europe, Vladimir Putin is the biggest oil and gas baron. He's used his winnings to launch a land war in Europe in the 21st century. So the world where we run on a resource that can't be hoarded, can't be held in reserve, is available to everyone everywhere, that works best towards the equator, that's a world that offers, I think, real promise for dealing with a bunch of the things that we face. Since I was writing this book in January, and I'm just going to read a tiny, tiny bit here before we turn to Rebecca. Um, um, As I was writing this book in January, it was when the huge fires in LA were raging. And one of those fires, the one in Altadena, on its second day, burned down the home where I lived as a boy, the place of my first memories. Um, as I thought about that place, which my family left for the East when I was 5, more memories kept coming back. Most were happy, especially of the first hikes I ever took in my life, which were up the fire road that led to the observatory atop Mount Wilson. In a lifetime of climbing mountains, this was the first time I ever had that sense of the world spilling out beneath me. That observatory almost burned in the LA fires too, but a skeleton crew was able to keep it safe, and thank heaven. It was up there that the great astronomer Edwin Hubble, using the 100-inch telescope, which was then the biggest in the world, first figured out that our Milky Way was but one small galaxy in a vast universe, and that that universe was expanding, setting the ground for our understanding of the Big Bang. But the telescopes on Mount Wilson also explored our own solar system, and in 1962, while I was living below, an astronomer named Robert Layton discovered oscillations all across the solar surface. Measurements of these waves allowed others to model the solar core and to calculate the rate at which it consumes hydrogen. These are the numbers that assure us the sun will be around another 5 billion years or so, which is long enough for me. Someone else can worry about what we'll eventually do when it turns into a black dwarf. For now, it provides all that we need. I really, if you can't tell, came to love our local star in the course of thinking about it as hard as I did, and to conclude that actually all of us kind of love it. I took the name for the book, of course, from George Harrison's wonderful song. And it turns out when you go on Spotify that that's by a factor of 2 the most downloaded or streamed Beatles song in their vast catalog. Twice as many streams as Let It Be or Hey Jude. And I think it's because that gentle and optimistic song captures what a lot of us want to feel, especially right now. I cannot tell you that everything's going to be okay. Everything's not going to be okay. We're in a hard, hard moment where we have to fight with everything we have. But I can tell you that there are some real possibilities, at least one out there for transformative change. And for me, getting to spend a couple of years just thinking and writing and now organizing about it has been a tremendous delight. Rebecca, will you join us? Everybody knows Rebecca Solnit. She is, as Anna says, the finest essayist at work in the English language and an old and dear friend of mine and hiking companion and and well, and just regal and wonderful. It's good to see you, friend.
Hello, Bill, and everybody from 7,000 feet. I'm in New Mexico, whose very logo is a sun. And I just want to tell everyone, you got to get this book. Nobody grasps and organizes vast amounts of information and makes them exciting instead of overwhelming like Bill does. The book is absolutely amazing and really sort of inspiriting. I just devoured almost all of it, the actual copy just after blurbing it earlier. So it's pretty amazing. And Bill, my first question is, I actually caught on to the fact that we're in the middle of an energy revolution some years back, and it really staggered me to realize when you started talking about climate, we didn't really have an alternative to fossil fuel because wind and sun were not so cheap, not so effective, things like batteries, so many things hadn't been worked out. And kind of my first question is, how could something so amazing happen without everyone just like dancing in the streets? And I keep thinking there's that old slogan, all you people from the 60s remember, what if they had a war and nobody came? And I'm like, what if they had a revolution and nobody noticed? How come people don't know this?
Well, I think in part it's because of what I was saying before about how effectively we'd labeled this as alternative energy. Um, Remember, and your point is absolutely right, for all of us who've been working in the climate movement all these years, um, for almost that entire 40-year stretch, the basic configuration was fossil fuel is cheap and renewable energy is expensive. And so a huge amount of our effort was devoted to the project of making fossil fuel more expensive. That's what carbon taxes were about. That's why we were divesting from fossil fuel and are to make its costs of capital higher. It's why we were blocking its expansion, things like the Keystone Pipeline to get in the way of their easy economics. But always that was the rule. And now that it's flipped in the last 3 or 4 years, I think it takes a while for people to reorient themselves, especially since we have the oil industry and the most powerful people in our country endlessly repeating a set of absurd lies. I mean, it's not just that Donald Trump thinks that windmills will give you cancer. He thinks that electric vehicles can only go 15 miles. He thinks that people who rely on solar power have to turn off the TV at sunset because they no longer have any power. These are the kind of things that he and now his Secretary of Energy and the head of the EPA and things just say over and over and over again. Meanwhile, in less ideologically divided places, people have caught on. I think that's the other reason we haven't completely noticed. It's because the biggest part of this story has been happening out of view in China, where they figured out that this was going to be the technology of the future. And though they hadn't invented it, they were determined to own it, perfect it. And so they put their heads down, and now they're yielding the results, not just with the huge number of solar panels and wind turbines in China and powerful battery technology and on and on. They're also, in terms of the appliances to make use of this stuff, most notably the electric vehicle. We think of Detroit as the capital of automotive engineering. It's now taking a second place or third place to two or three Chinese cities whose names I find difficult to pronounce, but which are producing the best and cheapest cars on the planet and now selling them across the developing world. The other place where people have noticed is in places where electricity is super expensive and super unreliable. Next door to China in Pakistan, last year they put up the equivalent of half the country's national electric grid, just people buying cheap panels from China, watching TikTok videos about how to put them together on their roof. And they're now supplying an immense amount of power, something that appears, with good reporting even in the last few days, to now be playing out across much of Africa as well.
That is amazing. And it's kind of a great bridge to the next question I wanted to ask you. And I realized we'd had an energy revolution. Then for a bunch of years, I was like, oh, we had it. And then I realized, like, no, we're really at the beginning of it, right? Because there's no reason to assume that all the improvements since, say, 2000 have already been made. What do you see happening next?
Well, I mean, the good news is that this stuff gets cheaper over and over and over again. And here's the way to think about it, because it requires sort of shifting your thinking a little. We're used to thinking of energy as a commodity, and in fact, one that gets a little scarcer and harder to find. If you want to drill for oil now, you basically have to figure out how to go way beneath the surface of the ocean, and do deep sea drilling. Um, but solar power is not like that. Really, the only thing you're buying is the set of panels. It's not a commodity, it's more a kind of reflection of human ingenuity. And human ingenuity can keep going. Every time we double the amount of solar power installed on this planet, we cut the price about in half, just because we get better and better at it. One of the things that blew my mind in the course of working on this book was to realize from interviewing people that I'd obviously been an early adopter of solar because, if I wasn't going to do it, who was? So I've been putting solar panels up in different iterations around our house for more than a quarter century, and they're all still working fine. But if I decided to take down those ones from about the year 2000, swap them out for new ones, the materials in them, the little bits of silver and boron and whatever else that are in those, we've gotten so much better at making them that you could take one of those 2025 solar panels, recycle the ingredients in it, and make 5 or 6 new solar panels now. It's not the circular economy that we've been talking about over the years. It's more like a kind of Mobius strip economy. The best guess is we'll be done mining new materials for a lot of this stuff by the middle of the century because we'll be able to just keep recycling them and we'll be getting better and better at the technology, so we'll need less and less of the minerals in them.
My friend Red Constantino from the Philippines told me that China had announced that, yeah, it's going to mine a bunch and then it will just stop because we just keep reusing this stuff. And that brings up the question that comes up all the time and something that kind of breaks my brain a little bit. There are times when it feels like people are like, extraction is really bad, so we can't mine for the equipment for renewables. And I'm always like, if you think extraction is bad, have you heard of fossil fuel? You know, one study I looked at the scale for renewables over the next little while would be 1/400th what it is for fossil fuel. And it's kind of amazing how we can see these things when the world changes, how we can acknowledge that pumping natural gas, aka methane, into your house is kind of a crazy thing to do. How wasteful fossil fuel is because it creates all this unused heat no matter what you're doing. But, people are always concerned about the extraction involved in building renewables. They're concerned about the environmental justice aspects of it. And you wrote about that a bunch.
Yep.
I read the
People
book.
people
Um,
should be concerned about it. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And extraction's always going to be a messy business. There is no such thing as a free lunch, but there definitely are more expensive lunches and less expensive lunches.
I
And
would just like to say solar is a free lunch once the equipment is there.
once it's up there, exactly right. Uh,
And when,
he- well, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's all. That's all. I just wanted to like establish that
Yes,
we're gonna enter
absolutely.
the age of endless free lunch once we
Here's
once we build out.
here's the way I've come to think about the kind of mining question. You just have to sort of do a little mental. I mean, look, we should definitely be working hard to make sure that we mine lithium and cobalt and copper in as ethically and environmentally responsible ways as we can. And there are some people that work on that, and from what we can tell, it's getting somewhat better, but not, it's always going to be a messy process. So the question is, as you correctly point out, relative to what? If you go mine some lithium today, then you stick it in a battery and it does its thing for a quarter century. And when the battery degrades, we now can recycle it, and lithium's valuable enough that we do. And you just take it out and start over again. When you mine some coal, you set it on fire and you have to mine some more tomorrow. That's why, as you point out, the Rocky Mountain Institute said it's quite possible that the total volume of minerals that we need for the battery transition by middle of the century will be smaller than the amount of coal we mined last year. Here's the image I keep in my head. Um, one boatload of solar panels crossing the ocean, say from China, will, over its lifetime, once deployed, produce about 500 times as much energy as that same boat filled with coal crossing the ocean. It's not that it's a little better, it's that it's entirely different thing that we're talking about here. Um, and a deeply liberating one. If people are worried as they should be about the human costs of extraction, you really need to also think about the human costs, not only of extraction at the moment, because we have to do a lot more of it, but also the human cost of 9 million people a year dying on this planet, one death in five from breathing the combustion byproducts of fossil fuel. There was a new study yesterday showing that 90,000 Americans die each year from breathing the combustion byproducts of fossil fuel, mostly those particulates that lodge in your lungs. But we get off easy. I mean, there are 5 million children in New Delhi. 2.5 million of them have irreversible lung damage just from breathing the air. So if we can clean that up, and we can because we don't need to be burning coal and gas and oil anymore, then, you know, then the human liberation that comes with that is enormous. And just by the by, the entire cost of doing this transition would be more than met simply by the reduced health costs of having to take care of people who are choking on, because their lungs are filled with particulates. Um, this is not not exactly a free lunch, but at a certain point, it becomes a lunch that pays you for eating it. So there,
Oh, I like that.
I like
Yeah,
that too.
kind of like blue chip stamps. No, wait, not exact. Not exactly. I will just throw out because I know you know it, but I just want everyone to. There's so much good work being done, speaking of the fact that we're in the middle, not at the end of this revolution, on materials that are just so much less impactful than the ones everyone heard about for a while there. But I also had a question. Did the fossil fuel industry promote that? Because I heard it so constantly and almost religiously that it felt like kind of like the way the fossil fuel industry got everyone to obsess about their climate footprint instead of the fossil fuel industry's climate footprint.
Yeah, no, there's now been a lot of good work about how the fossil fuel industry has perpetuated any number of myths. For instance, the fact that the great danger to whales in this world is somehow offshore wind turbines. There was a story in the Times yesterday about one law firm invoking the federal government's power to try and shut down the professor at Brown University, Timmons Roberts, who's been investigating precisely this kind of attacks from the fossil fuel industry. So yeah, there are many. Much of it comes from that, but there also is, and this is just very real, and we need to address it. Um, there also is a tendency for too many people to just be resistant to the new. And in this case, it often takes the form of, I don't want to look at that. That looks alien to me. So I don't want to see it. Don't put it near me. I will sue to stop you from doing it. Um, and I think that's a really grave mistake. I've noticed a lot in talking with young people about this that they are not only deeply in favor of clean, renewable, new energy. It's the most exciting thing in their world, but deeply resentful of especially older people who are trying to hold on to the exact same world that they grew up in and don't want and can't see that there are huge possibilities for new kinds of beauty here. Just to give an example, um, in Vermont, where I live, one of the things that happens on a lot of these solar farms is that they're now interplanted between the rows with pollinator-friendly flowers and weeds, um, which are attracting 100 times more pollinating insects than the cornfield that was there before or the abandoned cornfield. And the farmers around them report huge increases, 30, 40% in fruit set in their orchards because all these insects are at work. In fact, around the world, we're really starting to realize that on an overheating planet, shade is a valuable commodity. And shade is, one thing you create when you put up solar panels. Uh, it retains moisture in those fields. I was just looking, you know me, Rebecca, I'm a beer guy, but I was just looking at new data that shows from French wine growers 60% increase in Chardonnay yields in fields where they're growing the vines in and amongst solar panels. Um, so the possibilities for new, humble, and inspired creativity as we work kind of with the world instead of over it are really something that excites me a lot.
One thing I think about a lot is we've really normalized the fossil fuel industry and fossil fuel in so many ways. And I live in the Bay Area. We have a bunch of refineries. They are not pretty. And it's weird how people will have a hissy fit about a turbine, which I think is rather nice looking,
Yeah.
versus what, like 9 million dead people, plus, all the evil of these, dark satanic furnaces going all the time. It's also just so interesting. I live in a Victorian apartment. When I moved in, it still has gaslight fixtures in the hall, which I'm pretty sure are not hooked up. And when I moved in, I was like, what? They lit their houses with gas? That's dangerous and weird. And now that I'm one appliance away from an all-electric house, got my heat pump, my hot water heat pump, about to probably get a copper induction stove, the most beautiful ones made. And I just realized, like, this came up when I was at an event. My nephew, who's 12, was like, when he's my age, he's going to be. Can you believe when I was a little boy, people pumped methane into their houses, explosive, toxic, weird,
I
wasteful,
think that's
cook their dinner?
good for him. Good for him. I do
Yeah.
think that, I mean, if somehow Trump maintains himself in power for another, decade or so, I fear that America may turn into the kind of colonial Williamsburg of internal combustion, where tourists who can get visas come and gawp at how people used to live back in the old days when we had to set things on fire all the time. Let's hope we can avoid that. And I'm getting the signal from Anna that I think we have some questions from our audience here that perhaps we can answer. Is that right, Anna?
That is
It
correct. We've
is.
had a lot. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
I see that it is. I wanted to just ask you one more very third
Oh,
act
sure.
question, Bill.
Yes.
I drove out to New Mexico with my absolutely brilliant friend Eric Meebust, who is so on top of the fact that one of the big obstacles is either getting the permits to build and
Mm.
complete renewables around the country and California, where he's focused on, and to hook them up to the grid. And to me, isn't that perfect work for third act people? Isn't part of the joy of our membership that they can stick within glamorous business of getting permits and things through,
My
you know,
friend, this is music to my ears. This is exactly what everybody's on about already at Third Act, is changing those rules in place after place. And it's a huge part of what we're doing as we go towards Sunday. And it's really doable. I'll tell you just one super quick story. In Europe, 3 million people in apartments have what we call balcony solar. They don't have a roof, but they have a balcony with a railing. They go to their local Best Buy, whatever that is in Stuttgart, and come home with a few hundred euros poorer with a solar panel designed to hang from that balcony and just plug directly into the wall, producing 25% of the power they use, maybe. Uh, that's illegal everywhere in the United States except the state of Utah, which 2 months ago passed by unanimous vote of the state legislature a rule that says you can do it here now too. And it's because a Republican state legislature said, why should the people of Germany have this and not the people of the Deseret state? And so it was. And now you can watch lots of videos of earnest, happy Utahns putting up their balcony solar. We can get that done across the country in September, starting in September with Sunday, and it's going to be one of the tasks that we're about.
perfect time for me to turn off my audio and head out because the thunder and lightning's getting pretty intense because we really are in New Mexico here. Just want everyone to
Fantastic.
be
Oh, fantastic. Rebecca, thank you so much, friend. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to get to talk with you.
buy the damn book, everyone. It's amazing.
Uh,
Thanks, Rebecca. Bill, I have a few questions. You've addressed a lot of the questions as we've gone along. There were a bunch of questions about do we have enough land for this? And what about people who are putting solar farms on agricultural land? And you've talked about some of those
Yeah, let me
things.
talk about, I like talking about agricultural land a little bit, because I think it's really important in this question, this way that we reconsider how we think about the world and how important our mental pictures of the world are, Anna. Um, we're going to need to cover something like 1.5% of the country with sun and wind, probably less land than we're currently using for fossil fuel development. But we need it, and we should. This is a valuable crop, clean electrons. To give you an idea of why I doesn't freak me out to imagine. I live in a corn growing county. Corn is the biggest single crop in this country. We have about 60 million acres of America in corn. 30 million of those are just used to grow gasoline, energy now, ethanol. That's what takes up half the land we devote to our biggest crop. And it's an unbelievably inefficient way to do it. I was in an Iowa and Illinois cornfield last year, some of the richest topsoil in the world, and I was standing there with a guy, a farmer who was putting some of his land into solar. And he said, "Look here, here is an acre of corn used for ethanol. In a year, it grows enough to drive my Ford F-150 pickup 25,000 miles. Look here, here is another acre that I am putting into solar panels. In that acre, in a year, it will produce enough electrons to drive my Ford F-150 Lightning, the EV version of the same truck, not 25,000 miles, but 700,000 miles. That gives you some idea of the efficiency gains we get. And you don't have to go pour a ton of nitrogen and phosphorus on a solar panel to make it work, stuff that then washes down the Mississippi and creates that dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And you don't have to blanket it with pesticides and herbicides. You give it some time to rest. Every time we build a solar farm, the builder puts down a bond to remove it when the time comes that it's no longer needed. That money is there waiting to be used for that purpose. So if the day comes when we no longer are using as much energy or we've figured out some other way in the future to make it, then that land will have been given its Jubilee rest, and will be there ready for whatever it is that we need it for. But I don't think we should get sanctimonious about agricultural land. Uh, Electrons, clean electrons, are one of the most valuable crops that we could grow.
Thank you. So there've been a number of questions, and you've touched on this a little bit about how can I bring solar into my rented apartment? How can poor people and renters afford this newly less expensive solar? And that you talked a little bit about balcony solar in Germany and in Utah, and that's one of the things we're going to be campaigning on, right?
Absolutely. You know, when I was sitting with Bernie today, Bernie was the mastermind behind the Solar for All part of the IRA Act that put aside billions of dollars for precisely the purpose of getting this to low-income communities. He's a great hero for that. And he's confident that they'll be able to win some of that back in court. We shall see. The Supreme Court doesn't give me much confidence about anything anymore, but maybe in this case will prevail. But yes, beyond that, we need to drive down the cost. And the way that we do that is precisely by these changes in permitting. It costs 3 times as much, maybe 4 times as much, to put solar on your roof in the US as it does in Australia or in Europe. And that's largely down to the Byzantine and Baroque permitting system that we have, with 15,000 different municipalities, each with their own building codes and sets of inspectors. Happily, there are ways around that. The most obvious is this piece of technology called the Solar App Plus, developed by the National Renewable Energies Laboratory, that allows for essentially instantaneous permitting once a contractor puts in, into the program, the equipment he's using on the roof that he's using it on. That's now mandated in California, Maryland, passed by the state legislature in New Jersey and awaiting the governor's signature. We can try and make that happen all across the country. And as the Utah and Texas examples make clear, that goes as much for red states as for blue ones. This is a somewhat trans-ideological appeal of solar panels. Though the Republicans at the top have done everything they can to discourage people, the polling remains very strong among all groups for solar power and for government support of it. I think for different reasons. I think since I live in a rural area and I've lived all my life really in rural areas, both red and blue, I know a lot of people whose main orientation is my house is my castle, and damn it, I'd like my own power supply for my castle. They're some of the most ardent solar enthusiasts I know. And, that kind of ideological divide we can work across. In fact, it's fertile and useful since most people at some part of them feel at least a little bit that way.
Yeah, thank you. So we're not going to have time to answer all these good questions. I really want to shout out, I appreciate people's thoughtful questions. And we do want to pass the mic to our friend Deborah Moore, who is the campaign strategist at Third Act, who has a lot of good information about campaigns, a lot of good information about Sunday, and some visuals to share. We're going to put some information in the chat as Deborah talks, and I want to remind everyone that this call is being recorded, and we will send you the recording of this call, and we are available 24/7, 365 to keep talking about everything we're talking about. So on to you, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to talk briefly about Sunday, which is coming up on September 21st. And it's an opportunity to put into action the ideas and statistics and solutions that are in Bill's book. And many of the questions that you've all been asking tonight, we want to put those into action. So Sunday is a moment in a much longer campaign to create visible and vocal public support for solar, wind, and clean energy as we make this just transition to leave fossil fuels behind. And we know, and I'll go to the next slide, we know that the majority of Americans, Democrats, Republicans, independents want clean energy. Red states, blue states, purple states. And so this day is a moment for all of us to rise up together and express our desire for this clean energy future. And I'm going to show you a few pictures just to kind of get you excited about the day. And then I'm going to tell you a bit about how you can actually get involved. So we're making a lot of art for these events. A lot of you are really excited about the t-shirts. We've shared with you how you can buy those. And art is a really important part of public education and public inspiration and encouragement. And so let's see some more pictures. That was the last one was B. Fulkerson and his sister Kathy Fulkerson in Nevada with an amazing quilt. And then we just had an art build in Santa Fe, New Mexico, led by David Solnit, artivist extraordinaire, and Rebecca's brother, by the way. And so we've got signs like mine over here, and ones being made. We've got posters. You can put posters in your window and in your car and on your lawn and various other ways. And so I'm going to show you a map that's really exciting about Sunday events. Today, as of today, we've got about 213 events across the country. You can check out this map at sunday.earth/events and find an event near you. And if you can't find an event near you, there's also other ways to get involved. And there's instructions on the website about how you can host your own event. You could hold a little rally by City Hall about solar permitting. You could, if you have solar in your house or an electric vehicle, come and invite your neighbors over and show them how it works. So lots of ways to get involved and lots of amazing events where you can come and do kid-friendly activities. There's music, there's art, there's education, there's going to be booths. You're going to be able to test drive electric vehicles at some or an electric bike at others. You're going to learn about solar providers in your area. Different events are different. They're not all the same. And then the next slide shows that here at Third Act, we are one of the partners among many for Sunday. And this is our page, thirdact.org/sun-day. And these are all the events that our local chapters that we call working groups are hosting and organizing. We've also got amazing lead-up events art builds. There's a textile, wool, and felting activity across the country. There's a webinar coming up on September 16th about how to invest in clean energy and move your money to align with your values, even a system whereby as little as $10 you can invest in clean energy, kind of micro lending. So lots of events on this page where you can learn more, as well as blogs and resources about how to get involved. So we are super excited to have you join us on September 21st to build the kind of vocal and visible support that we need to pass local solar permitting, streamlining rules, to pass state legislation, to fight bad things, and to promote good things. And Sunday for us here at Third Act is also part of defending our democracy and our climate, where there's a lot of resistance work going on and defense work. And this is proactive, positive offense strategy. So super excited to celebrate the sun. We're happy you're here. And we are going to be even happier to see you on September 21st. And I'm going to pass it back to Anna.
I was muted. Thanks, Deborah, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thanks for your good questions, and thanks for your activism. We need all of you. We need rooftop solar and community solar and agrivoltaics and all of the above. And we need all of you and your hearts and minds and creativity and music and passion and brilliant ideas to become a part of this movement. So Third Act organizes people in our third acts with a focus on climate and democracy. And there's a big Venn in the middle of that conversation. And that's where we are right now in the work that we're doing. So please join us. There's a lot of information online. We will send you a follow-up email with a lot more information, all the links that we've been talking about. I want to thank Lonnie and Veronique for running tech on this call. We're so grateful for you every day. I want to thank Bill McKibben and Rebecca Solnit for your brilliance and your hopeful and tangible contributions to moving the culture, moving the conversation. I want to thank Deborah Moore, my colleague working on Sunday and designing the campaigns that keep coming. Please join us at Third Act if you're not already here. You can sign up to receive information from a local working group if there's a working group near you where you live. You can also join a Welcome to Third Act call, which happen regularly and are led by volunteers. And all that information is at thirdact.org. We're excited about what's happening and what is being built by us in real time. So see you in the street. See you on September 21st. See you online. And thank you so much, everybody. We're going to head out with Bill Withers.